The words hit the crystal wine glass before I did. Sharp, dismissive, designed to cut. Marcus had perfected this tone over 32 years. The particular inflection that said, "I'm successful and you're pathetic," without ever having to defend the claim. Third grade teacher, he announced to the assembled family at Mom's Christmas Eve dinner. Same classroom for 9 years. Never moved up. Never advanced. Just stuck. The dining room smelled of roasted duck and disappointment. Mom's good china reflected candlelight. 18 people around the table and Marcus had their complete attention. He always did. "I'm applying for principal positions across 3 districts," he continued, adjusting his tie. "Assistant principal isn't enough anymore. Time to lead. Make real change. Not just babysit kids all day." Aunt Linda nodded. "Teaching is fine for some people. But you have ambition, Marcus. Always have." Uncle Robert raised his glass. To Marcus. Future principal. Maybe superintendent someday. I cut my duck. Stayed quiet. Let them talk. "May just doesn't have that drive," Mom said, not even looking at me. "Content with small things. Simple life. Nothing wrong with that." Marcus leaned back, expansive. "I mean 3rd grade? Reading books about talking animals? Meanwhile, I'm implementing district-wide assessment protocols, managing budgets, dealing with real educational policy. It's a different world." "How much do principals make?" Cousin Jason asked. "Starting salary around $95,000, Marcus said. Plus benefits. District car. Conference budget. It's a real career." "And teachers make what?" Jason looked at me. 40? 45. "Something like that," I said quietly. The truth was 52,000. But I'd stopped correcting their assumptions years ago. They needed me to be struggling. It made their own mediocrity feel like success. "The real difference," Marcus said, warming to his theme, "is impact. Teachers affect maybe 25 kids a year. Principals shape entire schools. Hundreds of students. Dozens of teachers. That's leadership." Dad poured more wine. "Your sister's content where she is. Not everyone needs to climb." The conversation moved on. Marcus's job search. His strategic applications. The 3 districts courting him. His interview next week with Superintendent Jenkins of Riverside Unified, the largest district in the county, the crown jewel of administrative positions. I ate my duck. It was perfectly cooked. Mom had outdone herself. "Jenkins called me personally," Marcus said. "They're impressed with my credentials. Med from state, 8 years assistant principal experience. Published article in Educational Leadership Monthly. They said I'm exactly what Riverside needs." "That's wonderful," Aunt Linda gushed. "When's the interview?" "January 4th. But Jenkins said it's mostly a formality. They've already decided practically. Just need to meet officially, discuss salary package." Marcus smiled. "I might be looking at 6 figures. Uncle Robert whistled. "That's real money." "That's what real educators make," Marcus corrected. "People who've moved beyond the classroom. Who understand education is about systems, not just individual students." I took another bite. The duck was excellent. "May's probably never even met a superintendent," Cousin Jason laughed. "Oh, I've met a few," I said. Marcus barely glanced at me. "PTA meetings don't count." "No," I agreed. "They don't." The conversation continued. Dessert arrived. Mom's famous tiramisu. Coffee was poured. The room buzzed with family noise, that particular frequency of people who've known each other forever and stopped listening decades ago. Then the doorbell rang. Mom frowned. "We're not expecting anyone." She went to answer it. Voices in the hallway. Mom's surprised tone, a deeper male voice apologizing for the intrusion. Then they appeared in the dining room doorway. Mom looked flustered. "Everyone, this is Superintendent Thomas Jenkins. From Riverside Unified." He was driving by and saw our lights. My stomach went cold. Superintendent Jenkins stood in the doorway, tall and distinguished in a wool coat, holding a leather folder. His eyes scanned the room looking for someone. They landed on me. "Dr. Chin," he said, his face breaking into a warm smile. "I thought that was your car outside. The university parking permit." The room went silent. Jenkins crossed to me, extending his hand. I shook it. His grip was firm, respectful. I'm so sorry to interrupt your family dinner, he said. But I've been trying to reach you all week about the spring implementation timeline. Your office said you might be at your mother's tonight. Marcus's face had frozen mid-sip of coffee. Dr. Chen's literacy intervention program is transforming our district, Jenkins said, turning to address the room. We implemented it across 12 elementary schools this fall. Reading comprehension scores up 23%. Achievement gaps closing. Teachers crying in faculty meetings because kids who've struggled for years are suddenly reading at grade level. He opened the leather folder. I have the preliminary data here. Would you have a few minutes to review? I know it's Christmas Eve, but the board meets Tuesday and they're very excited. Aunt Linda's mouth hung open slightly. Jenkins continued, oblivious to the family dynamics. The research methodology is brilliant. Culturally responsive pedagogy combined with explicit phonics instruction, differentiated by neural development stages. We're presenting it at the National Superintendent's Conference in March. Your keynote address is already generating buzz. Keynote address? Mom whispered. Dr. Chin is the leading voice in literacy intervention research, Jenkins said. Her PhD dissertation from Stanford has been cited 473 times. The MacArthur Foundation is considering her for their Genius Grant. We're incredibly fortunate she chose to stay in the classroom while conducting her research. I watched Marcus's face cycle through confusion, shock, disbelief, and finally, understanding. The classroom provides authentic data, I said quietly. Real kids. Real learning. Real impact. Jenkins nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. That's what makes the research so powerful. You're not theorizing from a university office. You're teaching third grade 5 days a week while revolutionizing how we think about reading instruction. He pulled out a document. The board approved the expansion budget. $2.4 million over 3 years. We're hiring 6 literacy coaches, all trained in your methodology. You'll supervise them, of course, while maintaining your classroom teaching. We know that's non-negotiable for you. $2.4 million? Dad said faintly. The research grant from the Department of Education, Jenkins explained. Dr. Chen's program has federal funding. We're one of 12 districts nationwide selected for the pilot. The outcomes will shape national literacy policy. He turned back to me. I brought the implementation schedule. We're starting professional development in January. Can you commit to leading 6 full-day workshops? We'll provide substitute coverage for your classroom. Same daily rate as before, $1,500 per workshop day. Marcus made a small choking sound. Of course, that's in addition to your consultant retainer, Jenkins continued. The board approved $48,000 annually for your ongoing advisory role. Plus the research stipend from the university. And the book advance. Congratulations on the Harvard Education Press contract, by the way. Teaching Reading, Transforming Lives is a brilliant title. The room had achieved a silence so complete I could hear the candles burning. Jenkins checked his watch. I won't take more of your family time. But could we schedule 30 minutes next week? The data visualization team needs your input on the longitudinal study design. Thursday afternoon works, I said. After school. Perfect. I'll have my assistant coordinate. He shook my hand again. Thank you for everything you're doing for our kids. Real educational leadership happens in classrooms. You prove that every single day. He nodded to the room. Merry Christmas, everyone. Sorry again for the intrusion. Mom showed him out. The sound of the front door closing echoed like a gunshot. No one moved. No one spoke. Finally, Cousin Jason broke the silence. Did he say, Stanford? PhD. MacArthur Genius Grant? Aunt Linda whispered. $2.4 million federal grant? Uncle Robert's voice cracked. I sat back down. Cut another bite of tiramisu. It was excellent. Espresso-soaked ladyfingers, perfect mascarpone ratio. Marcus stared at me. His coffee cup trembled slightly in his hand. You have a PhD? Completed it 4 years ago, I said. Defended my dissertation while teaching full-time. Stanford has an excellent distance learning program. But you're a third-grade teacher. Yes. That's where the research happens. That's where kids learn to read. Or don't. I took another bite. Turns out teaching 8-year-olds to decode multisyllabic words while understanding morphological patterns is actually quite complex. Requires understanding of cognitive development, linguistics, neuroscience, cultural psychology. Takes years of study. The federal grant. Dad started. Department of Education. Competitive application. 94 proposals submitted. 12 funded. Mine scored highest in the literacy intervention category. I sipped my coffee. The outcomes determine national policy. No pressure. Mom returned to the dining room looking dazed. May, I didn't know. You never asked, I said simply. Marcus found his voice. You're consulting with Riverside Unified? That's where I'm interviewing. I know. Jenkins mentioned your application last week. Asked if I knew you. I met his eyes. I said we were related but not close. That I couldn't speak to your qualifications for educational leadership. His face went white. What did he say? He said the position requires someone who understands that real teaching happens in classrooms. That the best principals never forget they were teachers first. That administrative experience without recent classroom experience creates disconnection from actual learning. I pushed my plate away. Then he said they're looking for someone who sees teaching as the highest calling in education. Not as a stepping stone. Not as something to escape from. As the actual work. I taught for 3 years, Marcus said weakly. Before becoming assistant principal. 8 years ago. Educational practice has transformed since then. New research on reading science. New understanding of how kids actually learn. You've been in offices while teachers have been implementing evidence-based practices you probably can't even name. Aunt Linda cleared her throat. But Marcus has management experience. Managing isn't leading, I said. And neither one matters if you don't understand the core work. Jenkins wants a principal who can walk into any classroom and model excellent teaching. Who can coach teachers on literacy instruction. Who reads current research. Who respects classroom teachers as the most important people in the building. I stood up. He asked me to review all principal applications. Evaluate them for pedagogical knowledge. I reviewed yours, Marcus. His hands gripped the table edge. Your writing sample discussed managing budgets, handling difficult parents, maintaining order. Not one word about teaching and learning. Not one reference to current research. Not one example of how you've improved student outcomes. I picked up my coat from the chair. Jenkins said your application read like someone who wanted to escape the classroom, not lead teachers. Someone who saw students as management problems instead of learners. Someone who'd forgotten why schools exist. Mom started. I recommended against your application, I continued. I told Jenkins that Riverside Unified deserves a principal who understands that teaching third graders to read is the most important work in education. Who respects classroom teachers. Who knows that leadership means elevating the profession, not climbing out of it. Marcus's face had gone from white to red. You sabotaged my application? I evaluated it honestly. Jenkins asked for my professional opinion. I gave it. I put on my coat. He told me this morning they're rejecting your application. Too focused on administration, not enough on education. His words, not mine. I walked toward the door. Turned back. You called me a glorified babysitter. Said I couldn't handle a real career. That teachers like me have no ambition. The family sat frozen around the table. I teach 24 third graders to read. Every year. Kids who arrive reading at kindergarten level leave reading at 5th grade level. That's not babysitting. That's transformation. That's what real educators do. I opened the door. Cold December air rushed in. My consultant rate is $1,500 a day. My federal research grant is $2.4 million. My book advance is $85,000. My keynote speaking fees start at $10,000. And every day I teach third grade. Because that's where it matters. That's where real leadership happens. Marcus stared at his empty coffee cup. Good luck with your principal search, I said. I hear Riverside is very selective. They only want the best. I walked to my car. The university parking permit was clearly visible on my windshield. Dr. Mei Chen, Stanford Education Research Fellow. My phone buzzed. Email from Jenkins. Board meeting went well. Expansion approved. Can you start the coaching program in January? I replied, Yes. Looking forward to it. Then I blocked Marcus's number. Then Mom's. Then Dad's. The family group chat erupted as I drove away. 87 messages in 10 minutes. Apologies. Questions. Demands for explanation. Accusations. More apologies. I deleted the entire thread. 3 months later, Jenkins called. The board wants to name the Literacy Center after you. The Dr. Machin Center for Reading Excellence. Would you accept? I thought about Marcus's rejection letter. About him still searching for principal positions. About teaching my 24 third graders every day. About the research. About the kids learning to read. Only if it's located in an elementary school, I said. Where the actual teaching happens. They broke ground in April. The center opened in September. 20 literacy coaches trained in my methodology. Serving 12 schools. 18,000 students. Marcus never mentioned education on social media again. I taught 3rd grade. Published my book. Won the MacArthur Grant. Gave the keynote address. Every morning 24 kids called me Dr. Chin. Every morning they learned to read. That was enough. That was everything.